So please settle down. So sir, with your permission, we'll start. All good? Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. So this was for tea and breakfast, right? Please excuse me if I slip on my comparing. I normally don't read while I speak, but this being a very important and precious session for the first regional council vibrant Gujarat meeting, we are absolutely delighted to welcome our guests and our esteemed speakers. It is a great pleasure and honor for me. Myself, Shubhadeep Sen, I am working as Chief Finance Officer and GM Finance of our generation company, Gujarat State Electricity Corporation Limited. So our session, pretty long one, if the title goes, Decarbonization of Economy, Harnessing Solar Energy for Agriculture, Industry and Services, Leveraging Carbon Credits. So I don't think we have left anything behind now. We live in a time when the climate imperative is no longer a distant concern, but a pressing reality. India's commitment to reach net zero by 2070 positions us amongst the global leaders in ambition, yet the journey ahead demands innovation, informed policy decisions, and strong collaboration. For Gujarat, already a leader in energy, industry and enterprise, the opportunity and responsibility to lead the clean energy transition is immense. This panel discussion is timely because carbon credits are emerging as a vital tool in the transition, a way to align ecological goals with financial incentives, helping industries reduce emissions in a cost-efficient manner while unlocking green investment flows. But carbon markets, as we all know, are complex, with challenges around credibility, transparency, additionality, and alignment with global norms. That's why today's discussion is so more vital. Let me acknowledge the cooperation we received from our esteemed speakers, our knowledge partners, our partners in the organization to make this session happen. Thank you to one and all. I would not waste more time and would like to straight away welcome our guests. He is an interdisciplinary climate scientist with a keen interest in both natural and social science aspects of climate change. He currently leads the Council's modeling work on Indian carbon markets. His main research interests include the representation of climate policies in energy system models, the macroeconomic implications of transition policies, and investigating the role, feasibility of different policy packages in decarbonization. Before CEW, he was a postdoctorate in the group of energy systems at the Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Research, Germany, where he worked on building tools to understand the employment implications mitigation scenarios. His PhD dissertation with PIK and TU Berlin looked at identifying challenges and suggesting solutions to technical and socio-economic barriers to power sector decarbonization in India using energy system models. He has a master's in climate science from the University of Hamburg with a dissertation focused on investigating the role of enhanced weathering through laboratory experiments. He has also worked with Climate Analytics, Berlin and GIZ India in different capacities. His latest publications include Assessment of Net Zero Scenarios of Gujarat, Supporting the Climate Policy for Indian States, Implications of an Emissions Trading Scheme for India's Net Zero Strategy, a modeling-based assessment. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Aman Malik, Program Lead CEW. She is a climate change mitigation, sustainable development implications, climate actions, urban climate actions are the interest areas of one of our speakers. She is an associate professor at the Global Center for Environment and Energy at Ahmedabad University in Gujarat. She was a senior scientist with the Technical Support Unit of Working Group 3 of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change from 2017 to 2023. She has contributed to two IPCC special reports, Global Warming of 1.5 degrees centigrade and Climate Change and Land, co-edited IPCC's sixth assessment report and contributed to IPCC synthesis report 2023. She has contributed to other global assessments such as the UNEP emissions gap report. She leads the South Asian hub of the Urban Climate Change Research Network in partnership with Columbia's University's Earth Institute. She was a visiting researcher at Imperial College London from 2018 to 2023 and has previously held a visiting scholar position at MIT. Her research focuses on climate change, mitigation actions for urban settlements, transport and buildings and their co-benefits and interlinkages with development. She is an associate editor on the Climate and Development Journal. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Meenal Pathak, Associate Professor in Gujarat University, Ahmedabad. Going with women empowerment, Darshana Singh, a part of CEW's low carbon economy team, focusing on the design, development of carbon markets to advance global climate change, mobilize climate finance, and accelerate the adoption of cleaner technologies. She also leads the Youth Office of the International Network of Women Digital Experts, a CSO member of the International Telecommunication Union at the United Nations, reflecting her deep interest in emerging ICTs and their regulation. She is trained in economics from the Sri Ram College of Commerce, University of Delhi, and public policy from the Indian School of Public Policy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Darshana Singh Madam, research analysts at CW. He is an associate professor and head of department of the Department of Policy and Management Studies at TERI, with more than 24 years of research and consulting experience. His primary domain of research covers energy market and regulation, green finance, and related financing issues such as climate financing, sustainable development financing, carbon market, industrial decarbonization, and ESG issues, intersection of new energy technologies, fuels and resources with public policies, social systems and processes, energy and climate nexus, governance and institutional analysis of energy transition questions, geopolitics of energy transitions, energy modeling and forecasting, and impact assessment of energy and environmental interventions. He has contributed as a co-PI and a PI advisor and team member to several collaborative projects funded by DFID, EPSRC, World Bank, British Academy, etc., and various other state governments in India. He has contributed to the policy making as a nominated member of the Ministry of Rural Development of Government of India in the selection of villages for their performance in renewable energy domain and in their carbon neutrality. To his credit, he has been chosen as an independent director of our group company, Messrs. Uttar Gujarat Vij Company Limited. He has visited Free University Berlin, Germany as a DAAD Research Fellow, visited DMU UK as a Project Research Fellow, and visited Dundee University, Scotland as a Project Research Fellow, and visited UTS, Sydney, Australia as a Key Technology Partnership Research Fellow. He has also been taken honorary positions as a visiting professor at Nalanda University, Rajgiri, Bihar, visiting professor at Just Transition Research Center, IIT Kanpur, honorary researcher at CPR, NICR, Orissa, and honorary researcher at DEFT, Orissa. He teaches courses on energy economics, energy and sustainable development, carbon markets and energy, economics of renewable energy, development economics, managerial economics, and environmental economics. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome Dr. Gopal Sarangi, Associate Professor and HOD, Department of Policy and Management Studies, TERI. Fortunately, I have three Bengalis, one standing before you, and two sitting on the dais, and all of us are of the same caste. Maybe we'll do some investigation and find out some family connections. He's a seasoned climate change and renewable energy professional, currently serving as technical director at Messrs. Proclime. He has over 30 years of diverse experience, specializing in business strategy, project origination, and operational management in the low carbon and clean energy sectors. As a technical director at Proclime, he is responsible for strengthening technical strategy and operations in carbon project origination, carbon markets, and renewable energy initiatives. He has been the vice president, new business, and responsibility shouldering the responsibility for new businesses and market strategy. And King International EKI Energy Services leads sustainability services with full P&L responsibility. Strategic business development, investment planning, and techno-commercial due diligence for renewables and decarbonization projects. He has actively represented Indian and South Asian civil society at international forums, including UNFCCC and G8 summits. Program and project conceptualization, planning, financing, procurement, and execution in climate and energy field. Sound knowledge of carbon markets, GHG mitigation, carbon footprint estimation, and energy conservation. Technical and regulatory expertise for solar, wind, and hydropower projects, including environmental impact assessments and regulatory approvals. He's a lead auditor trained for ISO 1464 and significant contributions to WRI GHG protocol initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Samrat Sengupta, Technical Director, Proclime. He is the co-founder and CEO of the Carbon Removal India Alliance, CRIA, the only non-partisan industry coalition dedicated to catalyzing and supporting the growth of a thriving, durable carbon dioxide removal sector in India, and exists to accelerate the development, commercialization, deployment, and co-benefit of CDR technologies in India. He brings extensive expertise in public policy and sustainability, particularly in Indian agriculture, climate, and food systems. As the former CEO of one of India's largest agriculture input industry associations, CropLife, he has led major initiatives in Policy Forum. His prior roles in Robobank and the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, the UNFAO, further showcase his deep understanding of the intersection between policy, finance, and sustainable development. He is a Stripe Climate Fellow, the only one from Asia. He serves as an independent director on the board of few large agrotech companies and is a member of several prestigious international platforms such as Oxford Offsetting, Principles Practitioners Forum, and is an observer for Carbon Business Council. He holds an MBA from XLRI Jamshedpur and is a mechanical engineer. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Asitava Sen, co-founder and CEO of Carbon Removal India Alliance. And again, to end the introduction round, we have again woman empowerment. She leads the carbon market business at Advait Energy Transitions Limited, based out at Ahmedabad, where she is responsible for building and executing strategies across carbon credit development, trading, and international collaborations, with deep expertise in climate finance, new energy business models, and compliance, as well as voluntary carbon markets. She has been instrumental in shaping Advait's presence in the India's emerging carbon ecosystem. Her work spans project development, policy tracking, business planning, and partnership building with a strong focus on climate change, mitigation, and sustainable growth. She also contributes to Advait's broader new energy portfolio, including green hydrogen and fuel cell technologies, where she has driven the joint venture formation, international technology partnerships, and overall business strategies. She actively represents the company at key industry platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our last speaker, Mrs. Avantika Gupta, Head Carbon Markets and Sustainability, Advait Energy Transitions Limited. No, or did I say Mrs.? I'm sorry. So that's the end of the brief introduction we could do for our esteemed speakers. I think they are institutions by themselves, and it's a very, very short session. So I would request our moderator, Dr. Aman Malik, who has been so kind enough to coordinate everything, to take over from me. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
Thank you, Mr. Sen, for a very kind introduction, I think, for all of us. So I think before we actually, so I would like to probably tell you how we have scheduled this session. Uh, so we have two context-setting presentations, to which will kind of set a good background on the background information that's required also sometimes to understand what this session is all about. Um, but before I do that, I would like to take a little bit stock on the kind of people that are in the room. So I would request whoever is perhaps from a university academic background or who are students, staff, to please raise their hands. Great. How many of you are actually part of GOVNL, so either GSESL or other organizations? Great. And are there any people from industry, developers here? Great. Um, did I miss anybody who would like to say from where they am who are not perhaps within these categories? NGOs? Are there people from NGOs, civil society organizations? Great. And one more question. How many of you are familiar with net zero? The term net zero, what it implies? And how many of you are familiar with the term carbon markets? Okay. So I think this gives us, as panelists, a good idea of what the audience is about and the kind of information that they've come and seek to come and seek. So I would first request Dr. Meenal Pathak for her context-setting presentation on net zero roadmap for net zero scenarios for Gujarat. Over to you, Meenal.
Thank you. I don't know if this works. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm a professor and I'm told to keep this presentation less than 10 minutes. How is that possible? I'm trying to just open it. Yeah, just give me a minute. Okay. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. So I have about 10 slides, but I'll try to be quick. So I guess not the whole audience is familiar with net zero. So very quickly, I mean, the title of the session is Decarbonization. What does decarbonization mean really? It means you are achieving growth and development at lower level of carbon emissions, which is already challenging for a country of India because we are expected to grow rapidly in the coming few decades. Even more challenging for Gujarat because you can imagine the trajectory Gujarat is on and is expected to be on. So just a quick background on what I'm going to be speaking about. We are presenting results of a report that we published together with Council for Energy, Environment and Water, CW. Weber was really, he did a lot of grunt work on the report, so appreciate our partnership. And we developed net zero strategy for Gujarat going to 2070 in line with India's net zero target. So this is a huge collaborative effort. Very quickly, I think Mr. Sen already gave the global picture, but this chart on the left shows that if we are headed on the current policy trajectory globally, you can see the blue line, we are going to overshoot the temperature target. So we might exceed more than 3 degrees of global warming. But as we know, the Paris Agreement said the target was 2 degrees, limiting warming to 2 degrees, well below 2 degrees, making efforts to 1.5. So the green ribbon at the bottom shows that if you want to get to 1.5, we need a steep decline globally in emissions. We should peak global emissions and go on a rapid decline. Now, imagine you are Gujarat and you are expecting a huge GDP growth. So this is the level of the challenge that we are expecting. But these are global numbers. What does this mean at the national level? But more importantly, what does it mean for the state level? So I will speak about that. Very quickly, a snapshot of where Gujarat is on emissions. Our emissions are over 250 to 20 million tons currently in 2022. Industry is the largest emitter, followed by the power sector, followed by transport, buildings, and other sectors. You can see the growth in the table at the bottom, that the decadal growth in emissions for the industry sector and the energy sector was over 5%, which is significant. Imagine emissions are growing at 5%. So how do we bring them down? I mean, we are really headed on an upward trajectory. So what we did in this report, how do you look at the future of Gujarat? what is Gujarat going to be in 2015, 2070? What is the population going to be? How urbanized will it be? What is the rate of industry development? Will the industries be the same as they are now? Will the industrial structure change? What happens to the power sector? Will we still have the same mix of coal, gas, and renewables? No, it's all expected to change. But what does it mean in a net zero scenario? So what the CW team did was they ran this model, which is called GCAM in short, the Global Change Assessment Model, which tries to map energy demand with supply. So how do we move all these people? Is it going to be cars, buses? How do we cool all the buildings now and in the future? What will be the fuels? What will be the efficiency levels? So we modeled this for the future, and we made assumptions about, as I said, population, urbanization, GDP, manufacturing, etc. And we also looked at what Gujarat is thinking of. So very quickly, I'll show you the results. We are still expecting huge growth in GDP. The table above shows that Gujarat's GDP, at least in the near term, so the first three columns, showing 10% and 9% growth in GDP, and it's expected to grow continuously till 2070. We're also expecting a rapid increase in urbanization. Gujarat is highly urban, as you know, but we might go to 70 to 80% urban by 2070. So quick, when people's incomes increase, when the GDP increases, what happens? Demands grow. Demand for cooling, demand for transportation, demand for industrial goods, everything, right? So I'm just showing you quickly this transportation demand here, that the passenger transport demand is going to increase 2.5 times from current levels, and the freight transport, goods transport demand will increase 11 times between now and 2070. Of course, the shares change. So initially we'll have more cars, but then we expect that there will be too much congestion and people will want to move to public transport. So then your share of public transport increases. What happens then, because in the electricity power generation, as many of you are the sector where many of you are coming from, what happens to the power sector? Well, there is going to be a huge increase in electricity demand, not just from incomes, population, urbanization, but because sectors will electrify. So in many sectors where you have traditional fuels, they will be powered by electricity. This includes electric vehicles, but also some industrial applications, many industrial applications, in fact. In fact, the modeling results show that the share of electricity in the final energy demand in the future is going to be 86%. So you can imagine, but this graph shows the share of renewables and fossil fuels. You can see the share of coal and, solar and wind here, the peach and the gray, going from the current shares. And you can see that traditional fuels, coal and gas, are almost declining. You can see that this is going. I was also having a discussion with my colleague here, and we were talking about how that these renewables are getting increasingly competitive. I'm doing very badly on time, I guess, Aman. I don't know. Should I wrap up very quickly? So yes, the emissions go down. But I just wanted to say that because we are going to expect a huge increase in renewables and there's going to be a high demand, Gujarat eventually becomes a net importer of electricity, of renew. We are not going to be able to meet, even with our expected rates of generation, Gujarat will be a net importer of green electricity in the future. You can see here a very small share of emissions still remain. These are what we call residual emissions. Aapne sab kuch kar liya, but then you still have some emissions, and we'll have to think about offsetting this to, so we are going to have a speaker to talk about that. So what we are showing is the targets for renewable energy, and you can see these are like 2 or 3 orders of magnitude, 200 times increase. It's an unprecedented level of growth that we have not seen. So that's the level of ramp up that we need for renewables, for storage, for green technologies like hydrogen, and ambitious energy efficiency to get to net zero emissions. So very quickly, I'll just run through the conclusions that, as I mentioned, there will be a tremendous growth across all end-use sectors. Industry is the sector of focus as the highest emitting sector and also the highest demand for fossil fuels. What happens in the modeling results is that all end-use sectors electrify, but this also raises challenges of of managing this variable electricity going into the future, and so investments in storage will be higher. Uh, there are there are ways we have not explored this in the report, but we are going in this report assuming that the demands will go as they are. But there is a mission life that India has about lifestyle and behavior changes. If we change the way our cities are powered, if we change the way our buildings are designed, if we change the way mobility is imagined, then I think we could have a very different trajectory of development. We also saw that there will be change in employment in some sectors because of net zero. There will be higher employment, for example, in clean energy sectors going into the future. There will also be other sustainable development implications like for water or for land, and these need further work. So I will very quickly close here. Thank you so much for listening. These are 2 reports, and our team was very large, so I also thank the contributors, especially Aman, who is here, but also other colleagues. So I just wanted to take a moment, if we have, to present the report to the panelists. Is that okay?
So what we would do perhaps is we have one report that each panelist could in their hand, and we will probably do a quick photo op. That's do you have one?
Oops, sorry, thank you. I did write the report. एक मिनट, मुझे आप भी आ जाइए प्लीज.
Thank you.
Sorry, you
Yeah,
are
yeah.
on the photo.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
May I? Hello. Yeah. May I now request Ms. Darshana Singh to provide context-setting presentations on this whole world of carbon markets? Over to you, Darshana.
A very good morning to the August gathering. I'm delighted to be here at the Gujarat conference and to share my insights on India's evolving carbon market architecture. Before we dive into carbon markets, a quick overview of what we do at CEW. We are impacting sustainable development at scale through data, integrated analysis, and strategic outreach. We work across 3 broad verticals of transformations, quality of life, and using certain enablers of technology futures, circular economy, and international cooperation. We are a multidisciplinary team of 330 plus individuals working across different arenas in the climate sector with 460 plus peer-reviewed publications and engagements with 20 plus Indian states and several multilateral initiatives. Carbon markets. To set the context, I'd like to start with saying that climate change is an outcome of one of the greatest market failures in human history. Essentially, the core of the issue lies in negative externalities of carbon emissions. The social and environmental costs aren't reflected in the market prices of what we either produce or consume. To set this right, there are 2 measures. Essentially, the first being internalizing the social cost of greenhouse gases, complemented by non-market measures like policies, incentives, regulation for adoption to a low carbon development. The carbon crediting mechanism is a way which is a form of direct carbon pricing where we put a price on carbon which helps the market allocate resources more efficiently as well as equitably. Through that, we enable trading of carbon credits which are generated out of emissions reductions, avoidance, or removals. Now, carbon crediting mechanisms have evolved under 3 broad categories. The international mechanism, like the Clean Development Mechanism under the Kyoto Protocol, and currently Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Under the domestic government mechanisms, we see the EU ETS, China ETS, and now the Indian CCTS as well, which is the Carbon Credit Trading Scheme. Also, we have the independent markets functioning for voluntary action, which is run by organizations like Vera and Gold Standard. The domestic Indian carbon market, which is known as the Carbon Credit Trading Scheme, which is recently being launched, has two key components: the compliance mechanism and the offset mechanism. The compliance mechanism currently covers obligated entities across 9 industrial sectors, which are aluminium, iron and steel, textiles, petrochemicals, petrorefineries, pulp and paper, chlor-alkali, and yeah, these are the ones. We currently cover scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, with the power sector currently being excluded. Entities are assigned greenhouse gas emission intensity targets, which is a rate-based system, with the 2023 and 2024 year being the baseline year, and we have a 3-year target trajectory where entities have to meet annual targets for the year 2025 to 26 and 26 to 27. Currently, the entities are not able to have any auctioning, there's no participation of financial players or offset credits being interchangeably tradable for compliance targets. However, there is provision of banking which provides flexibility to players. Entities that achieve the GHG targets can earn or maybe go beyond their targets can achieve carbon credit certificates, and those who fall short have to buy them from the market. Also, to avoid non-compliance, there's a penalty which is average of twice of the carbon market price currently in the market. The second framework under the CCTS is the offset mechanism, which broadly covers non-obligated entities for voluntary action across 10 broad sectors from energy, industries, agriculture, transport, carbon capture, and others. There are 8 methodologies which have currently been approved, from green hydrogen to methane land recovery, mangrove restoration, among others. The offset mechanism actually provides another channel for decarbonization, where we are not just having entities comply, but we're also giving them incentives which are value generating to attract private finance. In this way, we are actually trying to bridge the gap between policy ambition and market design as well. Coming to Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, which is an international framework for global carbon markets, there are two key frameworks under Article 6, which is 6.2 and 6.4. Under Article 6.2, we see that there is bilateral tradability of credits between nations. Recently, we saw the launch of the India-Japan Joint Crediting Mechanism, where there are internationally transferable mitigation outcomes through corresponding adjustments so that the NDCs are intact and there is no double counting between the nations. The second one is Article 6.4, which is a UN-backed centralized mechanism for carbon credit trading. This is like a successor to the CDM mechanism that we previously saw under the Kyoto Protocol. Currently, India has listed 13 activities that we can trade carbon credits internationally, and the private players are welcome to step into these and develop their capacities to trade credits internationally. The ICM portal and registry acts as the digital backbone which links all these 3 layers that I talked about: the compliance mechanism, the offset mechanism, and the international mechanism under Article 6. This backdrop of this meta registry provides transparency and credibility to the whole framework and enables India to be a global player in the carbon market mechanisms. So with this, I would like to end by saying that carbon markets are a very potent tool for decarbonization. Not just decarbonization, but also our development priorities. And we at CEW are continuously working to evolve that landscape. These are some of our research. You can feel free to deep dive into them at your own convenience. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, can you hear me? Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks a lot to both the speakers for these context-setting presentation. I think now looking at those two presentations, I mean, both of them were, you saw they were actually quite technical in the sense, even the net zero part, how we have to reduce our emissions and go to net zero. And the other side is these whole thing about carbon markets. And even within carbon markets, it's becoming complex and complex. There have been people who have made their whole careers only studying carbon markets That's the depth of the subject, and we are just trying to bring here a small part of the puzzle for you. And essentially, the main aim of this panel will be two things. One is the general information on what the state of carbon market looks like to you. But also, essentially, I think seeing that this is a vibrant Gujarat summit, try to say that there's net zero happening, there's carbon markets. What is in it really for the state? Right? So how can the state benefit for it? What should be the role of the state in trying to extract this benefit? Because we know that sustainability and decarbonization are becoming very important challenges, right? So, so again, a very warm welcome from my side also to the panelists. I mean, we heard a good set of like already introductions about the panelists. But just briefly, we have people from academia. We have Ahmedabad University, Terry University being represented. We have think tanks. We have developers here, Avantika and Mr. Sen Gupta, and we also have from the Carbon Removal Alliance of India, we have Asitwa here, right? So it's a great set of panelists, and how we'll divide this is that we'll have a set of questions for each one of them, and at the end there will also be some time, hopefully, for an FAQ. So I think my first question to kind of will be very broad from a macro perspective. And this question is first directed towards Gopal, basically trying to understand, Gopal, so what do you think should be the role of the state in the carbon market, right? Traditionally, we know that carbon markets it's been really towards like businesses who have been interested in the carbon market space. But what should be the role of the state? Should they just be a facilitator? Should they be a regulator, or should they actually buy and sell credits? Should they, for example, buy credits to achieve net zero? So yeah, what should be the role of the states in this ecosystem?
I hope that I'm audible. Very good morning to all of you. Thank you, Aman, for this interesting question. And I'm in fact here to learn more from the panelists than deliver. So I just want to take the Darshana's presentation a step behind. Just want to highlight, because because you got the understanding of the audience. The question first is that why country like India is entering into carbon market. Let me give you some background on this. Let's look at three important questions related to emissions, and drawing from what Dr. Minal has already presented. Is that if you look at the current emissions share of India, even though India is the third largest emitter, the share is only 6 to 7%. China number one, somewhere revolving around 26 to 28%. USA number two, 14 to 16%. India is third largest emitter, 6 to 7%. That's the current emission. If you look at the historical emissions, look at the data. We always forget that. It's only 3 to 4%. Look at the per capita emissions. It's almost like 1/3 of the global average. Now, if you look at the carbon market is an instrument to basically address the mitigation issue, because you know that in climate change you have adaptation and mitigation, right? So the two broad organs. Now the question is that, and you know that mitigation activities are mostly can be converted into ROI based projects, profit oriented projects. Adaptation cannot be. And because the positive externality we do that in the classroom teaching. Positive externality in case of adaptation is actually more. So private investors are usually reluctant to put in money there because there is no profit. Now the question is that if the carbon market is oriented towards mitigation activity, and why should India get into this? Now there are two answers to this, broad answers. I'm just giving the one answer is that if you look at, because there are four, before I answer that, I just want to, as I said, that want to extend whatever Darshana said. There are actually primarily four different pillars of carbon market. One is, we call it cap and trade, which Darshana presented. Basically, India is planning to venture into that CCTS scheme. The other one is VCM, voluntary carbon market, which has been operating since last 15 years. And the third one, which is an extension, successor of the CDM market, is Article 6.4, got approved in Paris Agreement, adopted in Baku last year. I was also there. The fourth one, which is innovative and new one, is Article 6.2, which basically a corresponding mechanism, it moves decentralized approach and all that. Those who are interested, they can get into those issues. Now, all these four pillars, VCM, you have ETS, domestic ETS, which is cap and trade. All three are basically, we call it baseline and crediting projects. So all of them have some implications for the carbon financing. Even though you look at CCTS, look at even what is happening in other parts of the world in emission trading schemes. They have actually moved away from a grandfathering approach to some approach where actually they can generate some public financing. So the expectation is that you are not only actually control the emissions, also in the process generate public financing, which would help you to divert the money to adaptation. If you look at Article 6.4, which is an extension of basically the question of the CDM, there is also a provision that 2 to 3% of the revenue would be directed towards adaptation fund. Even the 6.2, Darshana presented, there is also a possibility of technology transfer and can also help us in bringing new technology, which in fact we have identified 13 sectors in 6.2, 9 sectors under CTS. It's basically very well designed, identified sectors, because those are the 13 sectors where actually where technology, developments are not that far. We really want to collaborate with the developed countries and get the technology from them. Now let me come back to this is how you see that. The second part, this is how, why should we get into the carbon market? One is that we are not only looking at carbon market as a mitigation action, also there is a possibility of getting revenue and getting that recycle for the climate adaptation activities or related activities. That's the one point. Second is that you cannot really, even if you do not have or do not want to have the carbon market domestically, you cannot get escaped from it. Why is it so? Because there are international carbon price pressure coming up in BC in a large way. I don't know how many of you know about border carbon adjustment mechanism. One which is going to be implemented is called CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism of European Union. UK is planning one, Canada is planning one, Australia is planning one, Taiwan is planning one. So article, if you look at that, I think there is also an international pressure. Even if you do not want to do it domestically, you are forced to do it because India exports huge amount of, let's say, steel, aluminum, cement to European Union, and you are bound to take action. In fact, if you look at what is happening historically, India is not completely aligned to this kind of carbon market. We have already implicit carbon taxes and carbon market. We have PAT scheme in energy efficiency declared by Bureau of Energy. In fact, the whole CCTS idea in extends on the PAT scheme. Now let me come back to the question that you said. Yeah, so
the time is under control.
So yes, so I'll take only 30 seconds to respond on that. I think it's actually, if you look at historically what states can do. In fact, Gujarat has already been kind of innovated this idea of doing the carbon market at a regional scale or at a lower scale. Surat scheme is important. I think the point is that if you look at what is happening in case of CDM market, not only at the central level, also state level, there are state nodal agencies dealing with the CDM. I think we cannot, if we really want to implement CCTS or VCM, we have to come up with state-specific agencies. That's the idea. So states are actually in the center of the attraction when it comes to implementing the projects. I think states cannot move away from that. I think we need to look towards how, I'll come back to this again later on the second round. States are to be there. States are well prepared in terms, they already have agents representing Bureau of Energy Efficiency. In this case also Indian carbon market, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, the main administrator. So they have agencies, they're going to implement it. The question is that how do you kind of link between the, let's for example, have state-specific kind of a carbon market. The one question which happens in other countries also, how do you link the state-specific carbon market to central market, right? So that's actually one of the interesting things. Second question, the regulatory question. You have different regulators, Pollution Control Board, state regulatory, you have electricity regulatory commissions. Now you have these nodal agencies. They need to kind of talk to each other to come up with something which would help to implement effectively and meaningfully. Thank you, Aman. I'm sorry for taking more time.
Yes,
but it gives you understanding of what's happening.
Right. Yeah, I think, Gopal, thanks a lot for your comments. I think what I also take away from the comments is, I think it was good that you provided a broad, the framework within why carbon markets are important. One is, of course, there's mitigation, which needs to be done in richer countries first, of course, before India starts a lot of mitigation. There are a lot of businesses in richer countries. We need to show to their investors that they are actually taking part in mitigation, contributing to the well-being of the planet. And this gives a chance for countries like India to actually generate those credits and help in financing. But then India also needs to reduce emissions on its own, right? And then comes the compliance side. But most importantly, what we see is that for the state, as Sir was also saying, there are multiple roles to play, right? That's one is the role of actually a facilitator. So whatever things are happening at a central level, to make sure that the industries, because we are all very new to the ecosystem, even for a lot of industries, and we know Gujarat has a very there are lots of clusters of industries that are coming up. There has to be a knowledge transfer that needs to happen. Industries need to be prepared once a new scheme is coming, because unlike most policies, which perhaps we all know they come and go with the coming and goings of government, emission trading schemes are special because they will be there for the next 30, 40 years. So it's very important. I mean, in the EU ETS that started in 2005, so it's been there for 20 years. So it will be one of the most important policies for the next 30, 40 years, and it's good. It's going to be very important that we have a good understanding to it. Now, thank you for this very broad overview. Now, actually, I would come to the other side of the panelists who haven't had a chance to speak, right? And perhaps we will start with Mr. Sengupta first, because he has had a very special experience. Because Himachal Pradesh, I think it was this year, right, sir? This year became the first state to actually do a state-sponsored biochar project. So, sir will tell you what this biochar will be, and sir is from Proclime, and how did Proclime actually get into this collaboration with the state? Why did the state even want to do it, right? So, I'll hand it over to you to share your experiences about how this whole thing started. Yeah, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Aman. Good morning, everyone. I represent a company called Proclime. We are basically in project development and investment space in climate market or carbon market. When I am talking about investment, obviously, being a for-profit organization, we look for return. And people who are dealt in carbon market understands the variability in the market, understands how the market has behaved for last 20 years, showing upside in CDM in India of a $30 to a downside of a zero almost. So in that aspects, as an investor, we are looking for investing into projects which addresses the credibility of the derivatives in the form of carbon emission reduction or removal that comes out of the project, so that my product will be not questioned and its valuation we can estimate as stable. On that perspective, our major investment are on nature-based solutions and removals. Now, specific to the query of Himachal Pradesh, we are active in many states, including Gujarat. So, Himachal story came out that Himachal is primarily a hilly Himalayan region which has particular forest types, and there are forest residues, and we are dealing here with a particular problem of forest fire which happens due to pine needle dropping. This happens from 15,000 feet to a 6,500 feet. The pine variety, they have a particular leaves which is like a needle. It drops and it doesn't decompose too quickly, and it is very, very inflammable. So every year Himachal on an average get 2 times forest fire. So what is the solution? Last year Himachal has spent over 10 crores for a particular district where our initial intervention will be. That is in Hamirpur district, for preventing the forest fire. I am not talking about capitalizing what has happened, means what is the loss due to the forest fire. To address that, we are trying to utilize this biomass to produce biochar, which is already agreed internationally. I don't want to get into the detailing of that, as a carbon removal technology, because this biochar will be the ingredient of a biofertilizer which goes to the soil. And if you have that hydrogen carbon ratio in your char on a particular level, you can claim that it is more than 300 years or 1000 years. It depends on the hydrogen carbon ratio. So we are showing that this was a cost to the exchequer of Himachal. How to remove regularly. This happens from April to August, September. This droppings happens, and in between you have two forest fires. So if they want to prevent the forest fire, they have to regularly remove that droppings from the huge forest area, and that is costly, load to the exchequer. We are trying to make it a business-wise positive, means in capital term. We are removing it, we are converting it in a product which has product value, carbon value to it, and make the whole initiative sustainable so that it can be replicated um, almost everywhere in that region. Because of the terrain and everything, you cannot put huge size project because the transportation and other facility will, the logistics will be a huge problem in that. But it can be very well replicated in distributed form in all the terrain on Uttarakhand, Himachal, or where this problem happens. Similarly, in other states, we are dealing with invasive species, which has become a menace. Even our courts has given order to the government to remove it. That's also a load to the exchequer. We are proposing biochar as one of the solution. This is also a removal technology. We are doing lot of things, but this is one aspect which has been asked for, so I am.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Mr. Sengupta, for sharing the story of of how the project started in Himachal. Why I think the critical part here is that whenever states are looking to intervene or at least generate credits or provide support for credits, they are trying to also solve a problem which is very pertinent in the state. In this case, for Himachal, forest fires, we know they were very big. And in fact, we have also been working in Uttarakhand. In Uttarakhand, the problem of forest fires is also there. And the thing is, the state is really trying to do a lot many things with it, because we know the forests in India, they have a protected status. Even the Supreme Court now and then continuously says that we have to preserve our forest. And they have been trying to do a lot many things. So they have been trying to say that, from all the forest, the pine needles that are fall, perhaps this can be used to make electricity, but they realized that it was actually very expensive. And so biochar is a new route, where there is credit generation. You can even help the farmers in return. And so this aspect becomes very important when at least state intervention is required. Yes.
You have rightly pointed out, any projects anywhere in the geography should be planned with development imperatives taken into consideration. It should not be an alien technology talking about only carbon. You will not get succeed. It should address the local needs, the social needs, both from the establishment side as well as the people side. Then only it gets succeed.
Right. So now I would actually move to Avantika, and right. So you are in the carbon, like the development space, right? So I would ask you, what do you think are the conditions or the expectations that you have from the state for you to do business effectively? So maybe you can give some examples of how your interactions been, how much do you actually interact with state, either directly through officials, let's say, or indirectly through state level policies? And how do you think that for this business to grow, where can the state help you? So over to you.
First of all, good evening, everyone. Thank you to Aman and Sir for having us here. I'd like to firstly start by the point that at this point, I think we all understand the importance and potential of carbon markets in accelerating decarbonization, I guess. And EU ETS has been an example for us, how EU at ETS drove the prices of the carbon, thereby reducing the overall emissions. So coming to the point that what we can demand or expect from the state as a developer or as a technology enabler, clean tech enabler, is first to understand that there are two sides of the carbon market. One is the supply side, another is the demand side. So for the supply side, if we look at the supply side of it, first of all, we need to understand the emissions, that what are our current emissions, and is our decarbonization on track, to understand which are the hard to abate sectors, and to have a mechanism to evaluate and to understand what sort of emission intensity these sectors are into. Then to have a robust plan and target for us. It can be broken down from state level or central level to state level, then to certain zonal level for a better tracking of the plan. So we need to have set targets, clear targets, pragmatic targets, and a pragmatic plan to achieve the decarbonization part of it. Second, I think from the policy point of view, we need a robust policy framework and a robust regulatory setup for the carbon markets to flourish. And some of this would be from, if we talk about from a policy point of view, we also need new clean technologies to come to India with the appropriate financial support from the state, maybe in terms of incentive, etc. So in terms of cross border policies, we need that openness to learn from the countries which are ahead of us in clean tech space. For example, if I'd give you our example, we are getting clean technologies from China, from Norway, from Austria for our green hydrogen equipment manufacturing and for our fuel cell technologies. Also, we have been supported by the central government, as in we are getting the production linked incentive for electrolyzer manufacturing. So that has really helped us to take that risk to get into the space of the clean tech. So basically, along with that, as I said, appropriate finance mechanism to support the supply side of the carbon market. So this would lead to the generation of the high quality, because as we know today, it's not a quantity driven market, it's a quality driven market. I mean, we need to generate credits which are high impact and are high quality. So a couple of things on the supply side. Now at the same time, it becomes the responsibility of the government to take care of the demand side of the carbon market. So there comes the compliances, which ma'am has told us that there have been certain compliances which government has already imposed on the emission intensive industries in terms of emission intensity, taking 23-24 as baseline, and the year-on-year reduction that we have to do. So that sort of creates compliance and obligation on the emission intensive sectors to reduce their emissions, and if they cannot, they'd have to either, government can either keep it a penalization model or an incentive based model. So here we have both. Basically, if you're in surplus, you can trade the carbon credits. If you are not, you'd have to purchase the carbon credits at the double price of the current carbon market. So that basically caters to the demand side of the carbon credit. So basically, these are some of the expectations that we have. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, I think great points. I think what I really took from your points, I think the first point was the measurement of emissions itself. So let's say if the state like Gujarat wants to actually use carbon credits now in conjunction to net zero, right? So we saw that the first process was measuring emissions. That's what we did. The second prospect was understanding how those emissions will change in the future, and then trying to understand, okay, to reach net zero, to reach decarbonization, to become decarbonized, how much emission reduction we want to do. And so I think there are 2 points here. One is the emission reduction, which let's say will happen through solar power or through electric vehicles. A lot of it, these emission reductions are happening, but there are still other sectors which will be hard to decarbonize in the near term, right? And these are especially sectors we know in Gujarat, for example, whatever, iron and steel, fertilizers, etc. These are very hard to decarbonize, and at least maybe in the midterm, there can be more room for developers, more offsets through which emission reductions can take place. And I think this is where Avantika is coming from, that if you want to use carbon markets for the near term in the state, for states' emission reduction goals, then you need to be open to allowing new technologies to come, because for many technologies, for example, which we are running at a pilot scale, we might not, these are expensive technologies we might have government support for them, but there might be international investors who are also happy to invest in Gujarat and earn credits for this. So it can be kind of a win-win situations on both sides. So yeah, thank you for your points, Vantika. Now I would actually come to Sitwa. He brings a very unique perspective from the carbon removal side. So Sitwa, I think my question to you is to first just educate the audience also in this reduction versus removal debate, and how do you think removals are actually then important for Gujarat? Over to you.
Yeah, I'll do that. And since you have called me the last, I think I'll take the remaining amount of the time. And it's anyway a very new subject. I just wanted to spend some time, and it may take a little bit more so that people have a broader understanding, the big picture of where removal fits in, and then talk about biochar and other specific measurement, which he already talked about. So I wanted to talk about where we are coming from, what is removal, why removal, and how removal, which is your last question as to how Gujarat can capture that. I'll try to answer this in that sequence. So first of all, Mr. Sen already introduced us. CREA is the Carbon Removal India Alliance, which is the only dedicated ecosystem player in the CDR, carbon dioxide removal. That's the name of the industry, CDR space. We are trying to generate awareness, understanding, and commercial deployment of CDR technologies in the localized context, and one of them is already here. We have about 22 member companies which are doing different types of CDR technologies, not just biochar and other things as well. And so that's where we are coming from. Now, I think we have already talked about that there is a gap. Minal talked about that even if you do everything for net zero, even then there will be a bit of gap where there will be some emission, and that the primary reason for that is that there is a legacy emission. For centuries, millennia, whatever number of years, there have been emissions happening of CO2 and other greenhouse gases before we started decarbonization. And then second is there are certain activities which are difficult to completely decarbonize. So there is that residual greenhouse gases which remains in the atmosphere, and unless you address this point, the residual and legacy emission, achieving net zero would be very difficult. And this is why IPCC, and this is a recent phenomenon, that is why I jokingly say that in India perhaps only 500 people understand what is CDR. In this room also I think only 2 of us are sitting here who are actually working on CDR. So there is a need to understand that broader context because it's a new industry, a new sector. So IPCC has been saying that it is required to remove 10 gigaton per year of CO2 alone to achieve the Paris target at a global scale. And 2 things are very important in the context of removal. One is durability or permanence, and additionality. Removal for removal's sake, I remove today and tomorrow it goes back, that's not sufficient. It has to be locked somewhere, which is at least ideally 1,000 years plus, so it doesn't come back in the atmosphere. That is the IPCC's definition. Now, so how do you do removal? That's the next question. And there are a lot of myths because it's a new sector. There is a lot of confusion between CCUS and CDR. They are 2 different things. CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and storage, is already part of the 6.2 approved list, which Darshana talked about. But CCUS is somebody's emitting, I'm not letting that emission go out, capturing it, either storing or utilizing it. That's not net zero. Net zero is what is here already for centuries. I'm removing that. So that's the difference between CCUS and CDR. And there are 2 broad categories of removal. One is non-permanent or temporary removal, loosely speaking, and that is all under the portfolio of NBS, nature-based solution, which he also talked about. So planting tree itself is carbon removal, right? But the tree can die, tree can catch fire, somebody can cut the tree and cook some food with that. That's not durable, which is why there is a need for durable carbon removal, and that broad category is called tech-based or novel or technical solutions of carbon removal with a typical lifespan of 1,000 years. And that is why the cost of credit between NBS and CDR, which is durable CDR, is 5 to 10x. It's $30 versus $150 straight away, because it's capital intensive, it is difficult to do, There are a lot of science behind proving that there is durability. And under this durable CDR category, we have 5-6 mechanisms. Biochar, carbon removal, BCR is one of them. Enhanced rock weathering, which I'm not sure any of you have heard of it. Very good. And I think you are a PhD on that, right, Aman? So one time you did some work there, so good. Then there is direct air capture, there is bioenergy capture and storage, and then there is ocean alkalization. Now it's going to take the whole day in a classroom to talk about these 5 methodologies, not possible. But in the Indian context, BCR and ERW have excellent potential and possibility of scale up, and we are actually sitting on a tip of the iceberg, and with certain right interventions, India can be a global leader. And in our estimate, 0.9 gigaton of carbon can be removed through ERW and BCR alone from India, which is about 30% of the global production possibility. And this, with $100 credit, can be a $90 billion industry. And there are a lot of other co-benefits which I'm going to just now talk about. So there's a big opportunity we are talking about. And so let's talk about BCR and rock weathering as a test case because of the lack of time. We have lots of biomass. India has 180 million metric ton of excess biomass. Forest residue, agriculture residue, food processing residue, livestock residue, and all sorts of things which has calorific value. We have 160 million metric tons of agricultural land, 120 million farmers. And why am I talking about farmers is that both these technologies, the carbon that is removed, the product has to be applied to the soil, so that it is sequestered permanently. Now, biochar can be also used, and it is used by NTPC, and Steel Ministry has a green steel mission where biochar is recommended. That's not removal. That's avoidance, because I'm using biochar to, run my furnace. There's a difference between the application. So to be eligible for removal credits, the biochar and the rock dust has to be applied on agriculture soil and or other such permanent mechanisms, such as biochar can be also used in building industry to be sequestered in cement or concrete, which makes the steel stronger, greener, and carbon sequestered. So the scale is, I've just talked about the huge potential. Now let me just quickly answer why. And this is not about carbon removal. If we make this a story about carbon removal, decarbonization, carbon market, this is not going to go ahead. And that is what my friend has already talked about, the dependence of a carbon market is actually a risk. There are 4 huge economic and social benefits of doing CDR, 4 broad categories. One, of course, is the net zero mission, where actually removal can complement decarbonization. Removal is never a comparison or a competition of decarbonization. Both are required side by side for 2 different purposes. So if we can do both, I think India's target of achieving NDC by 2070 can be preponed, right? Rather than just doing decarbonization, or Gujarat for that matter, not just India. So that's obvious. And even application of biochar, I believe, reduces nitrous oxide emission, which is a natural emission from agriculture. So there are all of this co-benefit which addresses this first bucket of climate and environment. Second is agriculture and livelihood. Both these products are excellent soil conditioners. They have carbon, so they're introducing soil organic carbon. I don't know how many of you are from agriculture area. It is managing the pH factor, because both are alkaline substances, so they can actually convert acidic soil into a productive soil. Biochar is a spongy substance, so it can hold water for longer, nutrient for longer. It can help microorganisms to grow. Rock weathering, which I didn't even talk about. So it's about spreading rock dust, which is a waste of mining industry, but particularly basalt rock, which is again available in abundance, which is less than 2 micron. If it is sprayed on agriculture field, any rock naturally reacts with H2O and CO2 over a period of 100 years and converts that into carbonate and bicarbonate, and thereby this is of permanence of 10,000 years plus. So obviously if I use the rock dust, because I've increased the surface area, this whole thing will be enhanced, which is why it's called enhanced rock weathering. So instead of 100 years, within 4 to 5 years, this reaction will happen. Carbon will be sequestered.
So that's why I would intervene a little bit regarding the time factor also. I mean, I know you. I thought you're taking the end of time literally, but so I thought
No,
I'd
I will
just,
not take it literally. Just 2 more seconds. Thank
Yes.
you. No, that was just. But two more other co-benefits. See, people do not know about enhanced rock weathering. So unless I am able to convey that, then we are, the purpose is defeated.
Yes.
It's a very exciting new area. Everybody knows about the other things. We need to talk about them. So I'm just trying to give an overview and just wanted to talk about
Yeah.
two more co-benefits and finished.
Hmm.
So I will-
I think you can go on.
Yeah. So I just talk about these 4 buckets of co-benefits, which makes the case much stronger. So the agriculture co-benefit is all about soil rejuvenation and agriculture yield enhancement and farmer livelihood. Lots of byproducts.
So let me just intervene. We have our Managing Director, Mr. Shomesh Bandyopadhyay of GACCL. Please welcome him. Please continue. Sir.
Thank you, sir, for coming. We'll meet later. So this is the agriculture story where we are talking about what is, and there are a lot of co-products like bio oil, wood vinegar, which have their own economic potential for the farmer. Third is air pollution, and we already talked about forest fire prevention, so I'm not even talking about that. So let's say in Punjab, Haryana, where there is so much of parali, crop residue, that can be used for various products, including biochar, and that can directly address the issue of health and air benefit, air pollution, air quality. And lastly, the economic potential. All this, if rolled out, can generate millions of rural jobs, entrepreneurship, and the fertilizer subsidy, $33 billion every year on chemical fertilizer, imported chemical fertilizer. What is stopping the government of India to say that to get the subsidy, 5% of your chemical should be converted into biochar enhanced biofertilizer? Overnight, we'll have a 10,000 crore industry. There'll be thousands of proclimes coming over and just jumping over to take this advantage. These are policy interventions which are absolutely important, necessary, not for carbon removal alone, but first, the co-benefits, which I call core benefits, and in this case, removal is the co-benefit in my opinion in the Indian context. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So I think, I'm sorry the time wasn't sufficient, and this is, as you said yourself, a whole subject in itself, which deserves its own panel, let's say, like that. But I think the important points I got from you is, as you rightly put at the end, is that you want to see removal as a core benefit, and the core benefits are actually things that actually helps in India's development journey or help some core existing problem that's happening in the state. At the same time, the IPCC, of course, talks about carbon removal being very important to achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius, but there's also a whole section dedicated to the risks of carbon reductions or relying too much, on carbon dioxide removal technologies. There's a risk. We also saw that within the carbon markets, there's also a narrative. I'm not saying it's necessarily true, but there's also a narrative that carbon markets have been used sometimes for greenwashing, for reductions for which you have attained credits, but at the same time, going back, a lot of this research is also looking at things retrospectively and saying, well, actually, you shouldn't have earned credits for it. So now I would actually ask Gopal to actually touch a little bit about the risks or the big challenges that are actually in this field of, let's say, when we talk about carbon markets or doing removals at scale. Small scale projects are okay, but the IPCC talks about doing removals at a big scale, right? So I would specifically ask you to perhaps also enlighten the audience, what are the risks associated with, and is there a way to manage those risks so that, we do believe in the integrity of this whole system? Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So I won't take much time. Just running out of time. So quickly, just to highlight, I think already Sarah has pointed out the removal projects. I think you in the beginning said that any carbon project to be a true project is true, verified, additional, measurable, permanent. So there are certain characteristics. In fact, to go back to the history of voluntary carbon market, it got discredited because of this. Because certain cases, neither it is true, nor verified, nor permanent, nor measurable. And that led to kind of revival of the entire voluntary carbon market space now. In fact, look at the private certifying agencies. There are private certifying agencies like Gold Standard, FERA, Darsana presented that in the very beginning. So now they're coming up with basically ICBCM additional certification schemes like ICBCM and VCMI which basically ensure that the projects that are putting up actually true, verified, measurable, permanent, vintage issues are addressed and all that. That's one. Second, I'll come back quickly onto the issue of this fact that any project that thinking of in the carbon market space, now there are two, what do you call, joiners, I mean two jointers. One is that any project that are putting up is should be promoting the local sustainable development. Second one, that is also kind of bring in the new technology from other countries. Now the sustainable development question is actually one of the controversial questions. It depends on who are the owner of the, let's for example, there's a private investor putting up money in agriculture sector, right? Now you are expecting that the private party should get benefit from the carbon project and expecting it gets satisfied or get kind of accredited by the local agency, local people, which is kind of might lead to some kind of conflict. You will be using land, you will be using water, you will be using local forest, all that for your own benefit, if it is completely investment-led project. But you are expecting at the same time that the local people kind of give you the certification that yes, this is locally sustainable development. I think this is where I want to stop because of the time constraint, but that's actually the risk which is coming up. State level agencies have a role to play here. If they can come with something which, because we usually say the private, I'll just 30 seconds, privates, basically if you look at the projects which are actually put up under VCM, are not regulated. That's not true. Why? Because in indirectly all the what do you call the VCM projects are regulated because there are actually state specific, center specific regulations, right? Let's pick for example, you're putting up a project for forestry, so you're governed by the state forest regulations. So if those things can be made more stringent, probably the risks that are coming up could possibly be arrested. I'll stop here. Thank you, Aman.
Yeah, thanks a lot, sir, for your intervention there. I think at least the last point I think was very interesting for me because when I think of voluntary carbon markets, and I often think that they, that they miss this very regulatory perspective, like who oversees all of these, right? And we often think that the overseer here is perhaps the the agency which gives you the credit itself, and that's slightly problematic because there is an agency which gives you credits, but that it also stands to benefit from those credits, and this can create issues. But then, as you rightly pointed out, that whenever a developer is working in a particular area for development, it has to adhere to all those regulations, whether it's forest or it's for water, whatever they exist. And I think the second point, which was very important, which I also felt, was that you have to take the kind of the green clearance, you can say, from the people, the community that's also involved, because as you said, it's a project that you are doing for profit, but at the same time, one of the reasons that it makes it more, let's say, sellable is also if you can show the clear component of development or helping the communities. So I think the other side should also feel the same, is what I mean, right? So what we would do next, I mean, of course, we had planned for more questions, but I'm also looking at the time right now, right? And that we also want to have some questions from the audience. So so apologies for the panelists, but what I'll do now, there's one question which I would like to ask all of you, and perhaps that's the only way we can be in time, is that you have seen the carbon market space, you are aware of the carbon market ecosystem, right? So what message do you have for the policymakers or for the industry associations or for investors in Gujarat? What is kind of one message you have, or one technology do you think that's underdeveloped that the state should really look into? So I would request very brief comments from each one of you, and then we'll go on to take questions from the audience. So we'll start with Meenal.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think it was a great session, and sorry we didn't have enough time. I would have really liked to ask these questions. So my concluding remark is that there's a huge opportunity both in decarbonization and in removal. And I think Gujarat is just very well positioned because of our entrepreneurial spirit. I'm Gujarati, so I can go on about Gujarat, but no. But we are at this cusp in history, right, where there is an urgency around climate action, but there's this huge opportunity. What I want to highlight is that we are ready and we are not ready. My message to the policymakers is that I'm going to talk about the small and medium industry sector. and that, all of these things require capacity, a technical understanding, financial capacity. And I think we need to invest in building capacity and understanding. We need many more of these panels and understanding of how these baselines work, of monitoring, of digitalization. And I think we should not wait until these regulations come into force. We should start doing that now. So understanding data, collecting data, measurable, comparable data, monitoring systems, so building awareness and capacity of these small and medium industries. That's one. And my last and final point, and I'll stop, is understanding these trade-offs. That, there's co-benefits, but I also work with the IPCC, and I realize that trade-offs are very local. There will be impacts on local communities about displacement, and there are other trade-offs that we have not fully understood. So in the near term, while we take the opportunity, we should also be aware of those trade-offs and work towards minimizing those. I don't know if that is the answer to your question.
So it was a very holistic discussion. Am I audible now? Yeah. So it was a very holistic discussion, and my final points would be that we should not look at carbon markets as only a decarbonization tool. It's also equally a development lever for us today, because we can attract climate finance, technology transfers, move to a low carbon development pathway. So it should not be only looked at from the carbon angle. That's how we attract the entire ecosystem and get it together. So speaking on, the state should invest in data systems, robust MRVs, develop capacity for state level carbon registries to see the kind of projects that can be developed. And these can shape the way for Gujarat being the leader in the carbon market space today. Also, pilot projects under Article 6, because that can attract money, which is far more than what is there domestically, and it can play a huge role in the decarbonization journey of the state.
Quickly, I just want to highlight the concluding remarks that the approach now at the policy level is more of piecemeal, right? We have 6.2, 6.4, voluntary carbon market, CDM getting converted into 6.4, 6.2. I think there must be some way of kind of connecting those dots, not only at the vertical level, also horizontal, because CBAM is coming up. So how do you look at the whole story? And it becomes easier for investors or the stakeholders, NGOs, even the local communities to understand and implement it better. That's the way forward. Thank you, Aman.
Yeah, thank you.
From a project developer's perspective or investor's perspective, I want to highlight that for any initiative to be successful in Gujarat or any other states, we require the local buy-in from the community as well from the government. They should understand beyond carbon that initiative going to help to the state in its development imperatives. If that is sacrosanct, then the carbon can act as a leverage to say make that initiative in scale, make that initiative replicable, attract private investment like us into make that initiative replicable and in a mass scale, which ultimately give benefit to the locals, benefit to the government, as well as the state can benefit of its overall carbon footprint reduction. That's my point. Thank you.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So the first point is very brief. Make removal integral to net zero strategy from day one. Don't keep it for later just because it's a new subject. And this is not just applicable to the state, it's also applicable to the corporate world, which is pledging net zero voluntarily or because of compliance or because of CCTS or whatever it is. And the second point is incentivize removal to go from pilot projects to gigaton level, which is otherwise nothing is going to happen. For that you have to create incentives and monetization of the co-benefit. That's the only key word, monetization of the co-benefit. Unless you monetize the biochar application on soil and its benefit, there will be no incentive to scale it up, and the dependence on carbon market will remain forever, which is not going to help take it off.
All right, so I'm the last one. I guess everybody has covered all good points to conclude. I'd would like to just highlight from our real life experience what we have faced and concluded there. So I'd like to basically highlight the importance of government nudge, a small government nudge. How so? Basically, we have been into the business of power transmission since 2009, and a small pilot projects were coming up for green hydrogen, and we got one of the projects for hydrogen EPC. Then came the production linked incentive. That was a very small nudge. We were not for the off takers and everything, but we went for it. And not just that, we went beyond to cater to the off-takers market. So we got into the mobility and stationary fuel cells, which are powered by green hydrogen. So I just want to highlight the importance of government nudge, seriousness to achieve the targets, and have a bigger vision to not just cater to your. Of course, ROI is very important. We will not get into any business if we don't have the ROI. But let's have technologies, open policies, so that we learn, adapt, make it feasible, and look at the bigger vision, which is the mitigation of the climate change.
Yeah, thanks a lot to all panelists. So now it's your role. So you have been, unfortunately, let's say, or fortunately, how do you see it? Been listening to what we have been saying, but now open it up to you to ask questions. You can ask it to any of the panelists, or you can say to which panelist, and I would request you to just say your name and where you're from before you ask the question. So do we have speakers? We have we have mics, yes. So yeah, I have one question, yes.
Yeah, hi. Hi everyone. My name is Ronak Jave. I'm working for Gujarat Climate Change Department with the government. So I have like few insights for you panelists. As you mentioned, the Himachal project.
Yes.
So Gujarat has already delivered, biochar credits from the land of Bunny grassland in Kutch. We sold those credits from biochar to Google and Microsoft. So that is one of the achievement, and we solved the problem of invasive species called Procyphus julifera, which is in Gujarat known as Gando Bawar. The second one, I would like to, ask question regarding the CCTS scheme. That are we, working on the loopholes which are like happening in the other voluntary carbon markets methodologies? Because I was going through the 8 methodologies, and it is more or less like replica of, existing methodologies.
Right.
So, and the third one is, the enhanced rock weathering, sir has mentioned a really good point. There are only 2 methodologies as of now from pure earth and isometric. So CCTS is considering these pathways when it comes to a carbon market for specific to India.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thanks. So there are 2 questions. So maybe you can take a few more questions, and if the panelists can remember these, maybe you can take a few other questions. Where? So you have a question? Yeah. Can we please have the mic to sir? Yeah.
Hi, myself Nitin Saraugi from Bombay.
Yeah.
We are into ethanol and biomass pellet business.
Right.
And my 2 questions are, is there any platform for trading carbon credit, and what's the current price?
Okay.
And next question is biochar price and market in India.
Right.
Current price in market.
So we have, maybe we can take one more question if there's any other question in the room. Yes. Can we give the...
Hi everyone, Pratham Agrawal this side from Parul University. So sir, I don't know much about this sector.
Yeah.
I just like to ask about how Vantara is shaping the authenticity and verification of the carbon credits.
Okay, thanks. So I think we have roughly 5 questions now. Okay. So we have 5 questions now. I think the first one was on CCTS. Does either of you want to take that question? Okay. And the second one was, we know whoever this question was asked, so we can take it.
So you mentioned about the methodologies, right? That the methodologies look the same. So the government of India is saying that they're continuously working on improving the loopholes that you mentioned. Although the methodologies look similar to what it's there already existing in the market today, But Government of India's stance is that it has contextualized all of that to the Indian context, even for methods like rice intensification and various other under the transport sector. They're trying to localize those methodologies and contextualize it to the Indian context. How they're doing it, we yet to figure that out itself. But they're
methodology is developed by the bees and
yes,
bees,
yes.
Has taken it from yes.
Yeah, they are
Yeah.
asking for suggestions as well.
Yes,
so
exactly,
I already gave few suggestions from my side as well. So it was the thing is that if we are building something, we can like build from the loopholes which are already there to make
I
it
agree,
like
yes,
version 2,
yes,
not
definitely.
version 1 from scratch.
Yeah.
So that was the whole point.
Yes.
Hmm.
Sir, you want to?
Yeah, I think sir would be.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a great question. I think, see, if you look at even Vera, gold standard, right? All of these private standards and all that. So the basic methodology, go to the CDM website. Right? See, actually CDM, right? So go to the CDM website, 100-page, more than a 300-page booklet which talks about methodology. The other question is definitely you need to contextualize, as Darshana said, but the point is that you also at the same time keep in mind that there is a possibility of linking the CCTS with European Union ETS or CBAM. So keeping that in mind, if you actually particularly you contextualize it more, you might actually diverge much, and that may actually create some kind of confusion in terms of not allowing your market to get linked, and then you lose a lot of future opportunities. So that is also a challenge. So you have to make that balance. Contextualizing and linking with the foreign or international carbon market is actually a critical challenge for us. It can keep on improving. Let's for example, I'm also a reviewer of the Vera Gold Standards recent diesel genset to renewable energy methodology, right? So they keep on removing and improving and enhancing those methodology. Just additional point is that they also come up with new methodology every time. The recent discussion happening is basically about how to capture the suppressed demand, right? So it's not that something which has been done is static. It's a kind of a dynamic process. It will improve over time. Thank you.
So maybe I can try to address the question on ERW and the biochar price. So first of all, biochar is also in the offset regime of CCTS. The methodology has not come out, but it is there in the long list, both under agriculture and waste management. So that was one of our wins, I would say. CRIA, as the only industry association for removal, has a seat on the table. We have been invited, engaged with the technical committee of CCTS offset regime, and we are strongly advocating inclusion of ERW as the next step, and also make the methodologies more aligned to the international standards, so that exports are also allowed. It should not be only offset, should not be restricted only in the Indian market, should be open to exports as well. On your question on biochar price, current experience is about $80 plus, 80 to let's say 120, 150 in the totally in the voluntary market, ton per ton, yeah. And this is purely on the voluntary market. There are very few number of buyers, so the problem is to there are many suppliers and few buyers. And to de-risk this operation for any biochar business, I would say there are a lot of potential of capitalizing or monetizing the co-products, which is not just the biochar but all the bio oil and wood vinegar, which has its own applications. And secondly, monetizing the biochar also by, let's say, tying up with a local fertilizer company who can add compost with the biochar and make it a biofertilizer and sell it to the farmer at a price. So the dependence on carbon price should come down. Although there are some schools of thought which says that the carbon price will go up, I personally think that carbon price should come down when scale comes, like any other industry, which is good for expansion. Instead of just 30 global buyers, which are all AI companies like Microsoft, Google, I would like to see Infosys and TCS and HDFC Bank and NTPC and others to play. And that will happen only when the price comes down, not go up.
My response on the biochar, what he has already described you. Just little clarification. When he is talking about biochar price, it is biochar credit price. And biochar become a physical commodity that has a price in the fertilizer market. So there are a lot of fragmentation that need to be. Now talking about, you are referring to CCTS and methodology when as you are coming from carbon market background. I like to just clarify it. You are referring to CCTS voluntary part. because the moment you say it's CCTS, people understands it's the regulatory, and both the credit physically has huge difference. One is additional, one is absolute. The moment it is from the regulatory part, it is absolute. You don't have to prove financial additionality there. Here the voluntary is financially additional and environmentally additional. So both credit has quality difference and fungibility difference. So that I like to address. So yeah.
And to the question that you asked, whether there are any trading platforms. So talking practically from the developer side, most of the trade happens OTC in the voluntary carbon market space. However, we do have some exchange platforms. There's I can name a few: ACX, CTX, etc. In fact, last year I was working with IEX to design their trading platform, which is on hold and will be launched, I guess, when the carbon markets launches at its full capacity. Second, you asked about the prices of the carbon credits. So I tell you a trend. So there was a CDM era when we have RE credits sold at good price. Then there was a fall of the market. And now as the narrative has changed from, as I said, quantity to quality, quality-based carbon credits. So now the market has pivoted towards the CDR, impact projects, nature-based projects, removal projects. So these are being sold at a better prices. I cannot give a price because it depends on a lot of factors like location of the project, vintage, credit kab ka hai, and a lot of factors are involved. Basically, what impact other than environment, what social and other impact that the project has created. So it depends on all of that.
Yeah, thanks. Meenal, any points from you on any of the questions?
Not really on the questions, but what I'd like to say is that there's a delicate balance. There are cheap and available options now, like energy. They're not very cool, but then we also need to. So we need a balance between what we can do now that's cheaper and doable, to the relatively more expensive options like removal, which will also be needed. And what I would say is that let's keep an eye on the removals and the opportunities and harnessing them, but let's also not lose sight of what we need to do in the near term. So yeah, I'll just stop there.
Yeah, I think it's been a great panelist. I will now try to conclude the session, which has been hard. In any carbon market session, this is quite hard because the ecosystem is growing at a very fast pace. And this is unique because often what we see is that businesses move much faster than policy, but this is not the case here. The policy, it's moving equally fast, right? And again, there are also a lot of developments happening at the UN level, at the Article 6.2, 6.4, the bilateral mechanism we had with Japan. So here the policy is moving equally fast, and that's an issue because I think sometimes people are able to make business sense much faster, but making sense of policy, especially the nitty-gritties of policy and how they're interacting with other policies, that becomes more challenging, especially when it's evolving. Because it's not that they have been, even the policymakers are saying, look, we are designing something and it's work in progress. We will make mistakes, right? But we will continuously learn, and that's why they have, for CCTS, for example, they went in each city to explain what CCTS is. So I think as a concluding, as kind of a concluding remark, what at least I have learned is that for Gujarat per se, it seems to me that at least in the near term, there has to be some sort of a fine balance between doing a lot of mitigation, which in terms of volume will be much more. So the volume of mitigation that needs to happen in Gujarat is much more, and perhaps using carbon credits for its own mitigation perhaps doesn't make the most sense. A lot of the opportunities for offsets, whether we talked about voluntary offsets or 6.2, 6.4, that comes from credits or offsets which are being demanded from outside India. But that doesn't mean that there are not opportunities, at least at a local level, that exist. As sir pointed out, when the state starts looking, and Gujarat has compared to other states where I work, where often a lot of projects are looking at the development side. In Gujarat, whenever I've come, I've seen people to be very progressive in their vision of looking things also from a side where few people, because it has the luxury of looking slightly beyond the immediate development needs, you can say, of the higher per capita income, to look at clear business cases, to look at how things might develop in the future. So it also sets the standard for what other states might want to do, right? So I think that's a great, that's what Gujarat can give. And as Avantika said, there are many technologies through 6.2, 6.4, for example, on green hydrogen, electrolyzer, and all of these, which you can start doing at small scales, and the businesses then can learn from this ecosystem, right? And I mean, in both cases, I think the development perspective, I would be really interested perhaps later talking to about Asitwa about when he mentioned monetization of the co-benefits. I think that's very interesting, because the problem is right now we have the problem that we are not able to penalize for the pollution. So monetizing the co-benefits is kind of very hard, right? So, but yeah, thank you to the panelists. I think this was, I mean, I enjoyed the discussion, and hopefully you are also able to learn. I would like to thank all the people in the room for coming, Mr. Sen especially for his very, very great hospitality. I think Gujarat, whenever we come, it's known to be a very, very hospitable state whenever I've come. So thank you, sir, to you. And with that, I will conclude the session and hand it back over to you.
Great. A big round of applause, please. So, it has been a fabulous session, right? So, a lot of things to learn, and I think we are not knowing even, 0.1% what our panelists know. So, we have to arrange more and more sessions. I cannot guarantee about the hospitality next time. Because you will be expecting this standard, So anyway, all on the lower side, and this hospitality comes at the cost of lot of carbon emission.
Next time this session has to be carbon neutral.
Yeah. So yes. So we don't know actually. We want to progress, and then we talk of reducing emissions. We want to become a consumption-based economy. I don't know whether we should be actually following that way. Maybe we were much better, in our older days when we were not developing at all. And I know if you are traveling from Delhi to Ahmedabad, as you approach, you can see from the flight it's only concrete. It's very unfortunate. Now I will give you a contrast. Go to Calcutta, not a very developed state. You see full of greenery. So, so then what are we chasing? Are we chasing development at the cost of climate? Or are we encouraging climate at the cost of development? So it's a very big challenge for us. Thank you all of you. And it's time to, felicitate our honorable speakers who have been so kind, and they have always, mentioned us in various, WhatsApp messages to be, they have been very kind. They have used nice words for our hospitality and for the arrangements we have done. But I think it was our duty to see that you are comfortable. And I think in Gujarat, we have our own standards. एंड वो हिंदी में बोलते हैं ना, और जहाँ पे हम खड़े होते हैं वहीं से लाइन शुरू होती है. सो so that's how it is in Gujarat. So thank you, and I was trying to get my MD sir, but he had to go with his boss. Bosses are very precious. So they have to be taken care of. So sir is with sir. So I will do the honors to felicitate you, if you don't mind. Before I hand over the second felicitation, award, the interesting thing, you don't know who is giving whom in the picture. So that's the most interesting part. Huh? So you can always portray the picture in a different way.
Person is smiling more
Thank you, ma'am.
So it's an honor to do these honors, you know. Thank you. We have lunch organized in the lunchroom. I think I will request all the liaison officers to take care of your guests. Make sure you make them feel comfortable. The valedictory session is in the inaugural dome. It will start around 1 o'clock. So, so it's up to you. So how you organize and just let them feel comfortable, right? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Once again, thank you all of you.